Welcome everybody to the moment that you have all been waiting for. It is the opening of the second edition of the ITU Global Innovation Forum. 5 days of action-packed, unmissable and fun-filled days, if anything, if last year's anything to go by, with over 120 speakers of the highest caliber, illuminating regional perspectives from Africa, Arab states and the Americas, with one goal: building partnerships that mainstream entrepreneurship-driven digital innovation. Now, the forum aims to support digital change makers in building a bright future to enable tech-driven innovative businesses, provide the expertise to boost your local ecosystem competitiveness, offer you the chance to connect with a network of partners and projects to improve your investment portfolio for social and economic impact, give insight on how to raise the entrepreneurship bar in your region by learning the tools you need to build an innovation-driven ecosystem, and last but not least, access the latest resources that will empower you to overcome innovation roadblocks in your country by building future-forward tech innovation and entrepreneurship policies. Now, the sessions are being brought live to you on Swapcard, so do take advantage of this great technological tool and use the chat to comment. The Q&A box is great to ask your questions, and of course, reach out and connect with each other directly. And don't forget to use our hashtag #RediscoverInnovation to join in the conversation. Now, if you'd like to listen in on one of the 6 official UN languages for which we provided interpretation for you, just click on the link below where it says interpretation, and then, as I say, you will be able to listen in one of the 6 official UN languages. Otherwise, I'd also like to remind you that at this stage, you can ask questions on Swapcard, but they do need to be in English. So, without further ado, I would now like to give the floor to the International Telecommunication Union Secretary General, Mr. Hulin Zhao, who will deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Zhao, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have to unmute myself. Yeah, it's all right.
We can hear you loud and clear. Right? Thank you.
Very good. So, Madam Tony Bogdan, Director of Development Sector of ITU, dear colleagues, dear participants, welcome you to this 2021 ITU Global Innovation Forum. I'm very pleased that the theme of this year's forum is building partnerships to mainstream entrepreneurship. Mainstream entrepreneurship. This subject is very close to me. By meaning mainstream entrepreneurship does not mean that this is only huge international companies, but it also means MSMEs. I have long advanced promoting the participation of SMEs in ITU's work. And today, this community is a growing part of the ITU family. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in Hanoi of Vietnam for opening ITU Digital World 2021. This is a special year for ITU Telecom event. We started in 1971, and we celebrate the 50th anniversary of this event. As you know, that we already tried to move our focus of this event from working with big companies to work with more closely with SMEs. So these events have supported marvelously innovation and given tech entrepreneurs in recent years a voice in the global debate and the platform to showcase their creativity. And you might also have noted that just last week we celebrated the World Standardization Day together with ISO/IEC, where 3 organizations once more again highlighted the importance of participation of SMEs. So just 2 weeks ago, we repeated this message from our own event. This is also the case for academia, another important part of the IT family. In our fast-changing world, I'm confident that academia can help commercialize research by enabling spaces for its community to solve some of today's most pressing challenges. The 2021 ITU Global Innovation Forum puts entrepreneurs and academia front and center. It provides different stakeholders with a platform to ignite collaboration, put renewed focus on digital inclusion through grassroots platform problem solving, and broker new partnerships to accelerate achievement of national and regional ambitions. This forum will also help countries gain meaningful insights about ecosystem strategies. This is very important, as a few countries have startup policies or programs in place to support digital innovation and entrepreneurship, leaving many without the right enabling environment to support entrepreneurship-driven innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, innovation is one of the key pillars of ITU's strategy, and it is at the heart of our Connect 2030 agenda. I myself have made innovation a central element of my vision for the future. I call it the 4 I's: infrastructure, investment, innovation, and inclusiveness. Of course, infrastructure is still quite important for us. It's our main task to extend our infrastructure to connect those not connected yet, to upgrade our infrastructure with the latest technologies to make our ICT more beneficial to everybody. And to reach that, we need a huge investment. And here, innovation is quite important. Not only innovation in the technology side, but also innovation in the policy side. And of course, inclusiveness means that we will not leave anybody behind. I hope you will use the next few days to focus on these areas and help create an environment conducive and constructive to more innovation and investment in ICTs. Now more than ever, we need to encourage innovative approaches to incentivizing investment and partnerships across the digital ecosystem. In closing, let me just thank ITU's telecommunications development sector and the director of PDT, my dear colleague, Ms. Doreen Martin, for bringing us together all week. Supporting entrepreneurship-driven innovation will help accelerate the recovery from the pandemic and progress on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I wish you all a very successful forum and look forward to working with you to accelerate the development of digital ecosystem for innovation as a path to sustainable development for all. I thank you very much. Floor is back.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Zhao, for those insightful and illuminating words. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Doreen Bogdan-Martin, as you know, the Director of ITU's Telecommunication Development Bureau, to deliver her opening remarks. So Doreen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max, Secretary General. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to this second edition of the ITU Global Innovation Forum. I would say back by popular demand. We are excited to host this forum once again online, and of course to see so many of you join us for a second time, tuning in, of course, from all regions of the world. International dialogues such as this one are so vital to finding effective collaborative solutions to the challenges that we face today. And for me, two of the biggest takeaways from the past 18 months are, one, that connectivity is no longer a nice to have, but a must have. Of course, not just for the wealthy few, but for everyone, everywhere. And two, that innovation is the critical element that we need to drive adoption and value creation in underserved markets. Those old-fashioned business as usual approaches won't cut it. We urgently need new thinking and innovative solutions to bridge the digital divide so that people everywhere are empowered to participate in this new normal. And of course, with the COVID pandemic overturning the best laid plans of governments and businesses all around the world in 2020, we thought it the right moment to also shine a light on the extraordinary change makers at last year's Global Innovation Forum, so that we can highlight the challenges that they faced and also the opportunities that they see ahead. So for GIF 2021, we're going to focus on how, in a forever changed world, we can mainstream entrepreneurship through new partnerships and new relationships. It's time to take stock of the lessons learned so that we can start to build back better. So why entrepreneurship? Well, quite simply because entrepreneurship is the engine of every thriving economy. Entrepreneurs seize opportunities, take risks, and creatively scope out resources. They create startups that become small and medium-sized companies and high-growth firms that in turn create jobs and economic growth. They are the lifeblood of innovation. The COVID crisis has turbocharged digital innovation, and where connectivity permitted, anything that could go digital did go digital. And we now have this unique opportunity to make a virtue of that necessity. And by, of course, riding the wave of digital transformation and leveraging innovative solutions developed to maintain services and business continuity during lockdowns, countries can use the crisis as an opportunity to build competitive digital economies through entrepreneurship-driven innovation. Let's remember that grassroots innovation has played a critical role in advancing societies right throughout history. But innovators rarely stand alone. The best, brightest, and most successful have benefited from enabling environments with supportive frameworks and resources that help them to advance their vision to the benefit of the broader community. As GIF 2021 participants and key members of the global innovation ecosystem, your role in accelerating digital transformation is absolutely critical. And of course, our aim, as highlighted by Max and stressed by the Secretary General, our aim during this event is to help you optimize your impact and identify the resources, stakeholders, and policies that can support you. Today, we're going to kick off the forum with a high-level panel. We have a super panel. We'll be looking at how countries can leverage digital to leapfrog old barriers and to drive socioeconomic inclusion. We'll be following that session to highlight the digital innovation divide. There's a big divide. And look at the impact of that divide during the pandemic, and of course, the role of entrepreneurship to help us close that digital innovation gap. Tomorrow, day 2, we have invited experts from around the globe that will be shedding light on mechanisms to collaborate in ways, that better support entrepreneurs and innovators. We will hear ideas on mainstreaming tech-driven innovation in academic settings that serve as incubators for budding entrepreneurs. And on days 3 and 4, we will be doing regional deep dives. I'm really looking forward to that, where we're going to focus on good practices, sharing success stories of digital change makers from around the globe, and offering insights on the potential for new partnerships and action at the regional level. Shortlisted participants from the Global South COVID-19 digital innovation community will also be pitching, looking forward to that too, pitching their ideas in live sessions, and we will learn about potential solutions to deal with the cascading effects of the pandemic in the Global South. On day 5, our last day when we're wrapping up, the focus will shift to strategies to place digital entrepreneurship and partnership at the center of problem solving, with a call, of course, for collaboration on partnerships that can help to dramatically accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. ITU's belief in the untapped catalytic power of digital to re-energize the SDG process and to get us back on track to meet our global goals by 2030 is really the driving force behind our decision to launch our Partner to Connect digital coalition. This is a bold new global platform that's aiming to mobilize multi-stakeholder partnerships and concrete commitments to bring meaningful connectivity to the hardest to connect communities. Partner to Connect is a pledging system. It's due for launch in January, and it will serve as an important driver of innovation in its own right, stimulating commitments to support startups and entrepreneurs in the digital sphere. Of course, everyone is invited to join us. On Friday, of course, this year's forum will come to a close with the announcements of the winners of the Global South COVID-19 Digital Innovation Challenges, with up to 10 winning proposals that will get seed funding, that will get mentorship, and will get training to help to scale their solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, at the heart of our efforts to bridge the digital innovation gap is our vision for a better shared digital future for all. Young people with their natural affinity for technology are vital partners in making that a reality. And that's why we're also engaging in this year's forum, our Generation Connect community. We'll get the chance to hear their perspectives on this year's event as we wrap up the week. I hope that our sessions throughout the week will bring you new insights, fresh perspectives, as well as help you to forge new connections that energize the digital innovation that our world so desperately needs. These new ideas can be channeled into ITU's World Telecommunications Development Conference in June 2022. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to our high-level officials that are attending this year's forum, to our distinguished guests, to our event partners, our speakers, moderators, the community members that are enabling this event to take place. And of course, to thank you to the energetic young members of our Generation Connect for their involvement, and of course to the UN Office of South-South Cooperation for their close partnership in this year's forum. Over the next 5 days, I would conclude by encouraging you to be bold, to be creative, you can even go a little crazy in dreaming up how the next decade of digital development can look. It is those ambitious, original, dare to dream visions that will help us to connect the world. Thank you so much. And Max, back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Doreen. Dare to dream. Absolutely. This is where you're going to get the opportunity to do so. Excuse me. I will also just ask you if you could just get together and smile for a second or two. When I get my voice back, we can take a quick photograph. I'm here in the ITU, in the air conditioning here, and it's not something I'm used to at the moment. Okay, here we go. Wonderful. So there we are. So there you have it. Old-fashioned business as usual certainly doesn't have any place here. And if you haven't been given an excuse now to be gripped to your seats for the next 5 days, I don't know what would. I think that you'll have a great deal to get into here, and we'll be looking very much forward to hearing from you as well. So. I know the majority of you are also following on swap cards, so don't forget to use that as much as you can. So I will now take another quick drink. And I'll now introduce the next session, which is leapfrogging the pandemic and future crisis through digital innovation to accelerate economic inclusion. So I'm in a serial panel, and thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dorenbogdan Martin and Mr. Hulinschau, for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Thank you very much, Max. This is Michelle.
Hi, welcome. Just give us a second or two. I think there's a little bit of work going on behind the scenes here, but we will bring you the next session very shortly. Thank you. So I'd just like to ask all the panelists for this next session to turn on their cameras, please. Thank you. Anybody who's just joined us. For anybody who's just joined us, we're just about to start the first session, the Global Innovation Forum, which is leapfrogging the pandemic and future crisis through digital innovation to accelerate economic inclusion. It'll be starting very shortly. Thank you. So for any of you who have just joined us, or for you who've been waiting patiently, we're now going to be going straight into our session, which is leapfrogging the pandemic and future crisis through digital innovation to accelerate economic inclusion. So please take it away. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Max. And good afternoon, everybody. And I'm pretty pleased to open the session to start the Global Innovation Forum with this session on digital innovation to accelerate economic inclusion. I will start first, welcome, first of all, distinguished panelists and guests. I would like to start first by introducing the house rules. So the session is recorded, live and streamed, and it will be archived and made available also on the ITU website on the Swapcard event space. The session will be brought to you live on Swapcard. So you use the chat to comment, ask questions in the question and answer box, and connect with each other directly. Use our hashtags also. So hashtag rediscover innovation, hashtag ecosystem building to join the conversation on social media. If you wish to listen only in one of the UN languages, click on the link below just right now. And remember, you can only ask questions on Swapcard and in English. So having said that, my name is Rochelle Ine, and I'm the moderator of this session. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is my true pleasure to moderate this session on behalf of BDT Director, Ms. Doreen Bogdan-Martin. I'd like to welcome our distinguished panel, who will take us on an inspiring journey. In this first session, we will hear what some countries experienced when the pandemic hit and how they're trying to leverage digital innovation to help leapfrog the pandemic and future crises. Out of this crisis what was notable in many countries was the entrepreneurial spirit and the innovation power that arose to address the urgent issues that communities were experiencing. During this session, we will rethink how to address countries' challenges and opportunities to spring the inclusive economic development using entrepreneurship-driven innovation. I'd like to recognize today's 5-person panel in alphabetical order. So Dr. Florenza Haxi, Director General of the Development Programs and Corporations Unit, Prime Minister's Office of Albania. Welcome, Madam. Her Excellency, Ms. Valeria Ionan, Deputy Minister for Euro Integration at the Ministry of Digital Transformation of the Ukraine. Welcome. Ms. Nevana Manic, Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia on the Public Administration Reform Team. His Excellency, Mr. Sok Putuvu, Secretary of State of the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication of Cambodia. Welcome, sir. And His Excellency, Teodoro Willing Castro, Vice Minister of Telecommunications at the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Telecommunications of Costa Rica. Sir, welcome indeed. So we're going to be speaking, if you allow me, in a different order. And I am going to start with Mr. Willing Castro, Vice Minister of Telecommunications, Ministry of Science, Technology, and Telecommunications of Costa Rica. And I would like, sir, to invite you to give us your introductory remarks. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rochelle, and it's a great pleasure to be here and to be able to share with all of these great colleague panelists, and also for all the great people that are watching us online, and of course for Mr. Doreen and Mrs. Doreen, and also Mr. Howling, who have also given us a great introduction to the whole innovation through entrepreneurship topic. Is Also, for me, a pleasure to be here on behalf of Mrs. Paola Vega, who is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology in Costa Rica. I wanted to just address 2 points very briefly. The first one is that innovation is in some way the means of what we're looking for and not necessarily the goal in itself. Innovation should go and look for universality. Innovation should try to attend this digital divide. Innovation should go for efficiency and sustainability to be able to transcend in time, in balance with the economy, with the environment, with the different social challenges that we face. And that innovation should come along with for resilience to withstand the different challenges, in particular the pandemic that we've been going through. And this resilience is fundamental in the view that we must have in the perspective to face and to promote innovation through entrepreneurship. The second point I wanted to address is that we cannot just wait for innovation to come in itself. We cannot just put all the load in the entrepreneurs and their different ways of organization. And we have to promote it in different ways. And I want to start thinking about innovative people, you know, the training people both in companies and also users to be able to exploit these new technologies, the sensibility to accept it and to use it. We need innovative institutions by the means of laws, policies, and regulations that are agile and flexible in very quick time changes in technology. We need innovative platforms, spectrum, infrastructure that allow these technologies to grow rapidly in the different countries. And finally, we need innovative resources, not just for startups, which are bringing new paradigms, but also for companies which could be small, but could grow quickly and for acceleration of adoption of new technologies. So I wanted to just put these 2 points on the table as my opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, looking at, I guess, an ecosystem going forward in a multi-stakeholder ecosystem, indeed, to get where we want to go. Thank you for those remarks. And next, going to ask Ms. Valeria Yonan for her introductory remarks. The floor is yours, Ms.
Hello, dear colleagues. It is a big pleasure for me to be here today. I just wanted to say a couple of words about the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Our goal is to build the most convenient and people-centered state as possible, which means a country without queues, corruption, and without bureaucracy. In 2020, the Ministry of Digital Transformation managed to lay the foundation for building a digital state. We have 4 main goals for the next 3 years, which is to make 100% of services online, 100% of public services online, 95% of transport infrastructure and settlements should be covered with high-speed internet, 6 million of Ukrainian people should be involved into the digital skills development program, and 10% should be the share of IT in country's GDP. So I would be really glad to elaborate more later in our panel discussion about our steps and achievements and challenges that we face in Ukraine, and maybe our experience will be useful for other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yonan. This is wonderful. I mean, really glad to see that some countries are aiming really high to make this happen. Thank you again. Next, I would like to have Mr. Sarkotivu. Mr. Potivu, Your Excellency, if you can give us a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. and Rachel, for moderating these sessions, and hello to all our panelists. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure today to be with you today on sessions on leapfrog and pandemic and the future crisis through digital innovation and accelerating economic inclusion of ITU Global Innovation Forum. You know, during the pandemic, Cambodia government has taken a number of measures to prevent and fight, slow down the spread of COVID-19. Government has introduced a number of new public safety measures, such as I think it's the same with every other countries, wearing masks, social distancing, hand washing, no public gathering, curfew, zoning, quarantine, contact tracing, vaccination, and lockdown. We experienced one lockdown. It's not very pleasant, and I hope that many countries go through this. But I think one of the important things, we have managed to vaccinate 80% of our total population at the moment. And to ensure the continuity of public services, business activities, people, communication, and digital technology has played a key role in all this. And I think it also helped push for more focus on e-education, remote working, e-transactions, and we have started to send students back to school recently as well. So. And through this, I think, and the role of technology, the government, I think, in response to the pandemic, we have developed a number of initiatives to help fight the COVID, like developing QR code, contact tracing, vaccination recording, quarantine, tele-doctor, COVID hospital facility, and a number of other initiatives. And some are successful, some are not. But I think this is important in terms of learning and driving new idea and initiative to be more prepared. In response to the pandemic and preparing for the post-COVID-19. I would like to share with you that Cambodia government has recently set up a Council of Digital Economy and Society, which is chaired by our Prime Minister. We have set up 3 committees under this council: the Committee of Digital Government Committee, which is coordinated by our ministry, and then Digital Economy and Business Committee, which is coordinated by Minister of Finance, and then a Digital Security Committee, which is hopefully also chaired by our ministry as well. So we aim to push many initiatives to support this new council and vision in the next 15 years. So we aim to do many things in 2021 to 2035. Which will serve as a guideline and how we can create a vibrant economy, promoting digital adoption, transformations for government, business, and citizen, and to accelerate economic growth, promote social welfare, education, health, and the new normal after the pandemic. So this new council, shows the commitment of the Cambodian government. Which will be to promote the digital economy and society. It's a broad term with working very hard to identify, to focus what would be the new digital society look like. And I think I think conference and panels such as this could also be an important, I guess, a way to understand more about the global trends. In terms of how to support this new vision, there's a big focus on entrepreneurs, pushing new initiative, new ideas like a circular economy, helping us develop a more sustainable into the future, I guess instilling new philosophy or new ideas in terms of what the business of the future looks like, to integrate sustainability and supporting, make sure that the next generations have a better future. So with that, I just leave it at that and hope to share, to hear more from the panel and just have more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think one of the things that we're all grappling with definitely is what is, the post-pandemic going to look like, and definitely all of our countries are waiting to I guess, learn from each other, learn from the experience, and let's hope that, you know, the next crises see us better prepared, especially online. So I'm going to next, thank you very much for those remarks, and I'm going to ask Ms. Hassel to give her introductory remarks.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel. I just wanted to say a few words as opening remarks. In the recent years in Albania, and especially after the COVID crisis happened, innovation has taken like a very important role in policy making. So because I'm representing, let's say, the policymaking side in this panel. The economic growth through increased competitiveness and innovation is one of the priorities of our government and the premise for sustainable and socioeconomic development of the country. So the development of this entrepreneurship and innovation responds to our country's needs for economic growth and socioeconomic development. So we are now very focused in investing in human capital, increasing the number of self-employed people, so also startups, the promotion of innovations in technology, science, and how they are coupled with the existing, let's say, private sector in Albania. So startups and innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, we can say that in our country is still at an early stage. However, there is a great potential for becoming a strong ecosystem because this was also felt, let's say, during this, this pandemic crisis, where young people, which Albania has a very high rate of, let's say, young population in the region, but also worldwide, young people, they started to engage in these initiatives, in these self-employed initiatives, in this developing their own startups. So this was very much felt. So now we're trying to, let's say, capitalize on that and come further with more policies from our side that help them, that also incentivizes them. But I'll talk more a little bit later on what we are doing and what are the challenges, of course. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassel. And it's good to know, as Dorin said, you know, one of the coalitions that we have is that we're going to have, that will be launched next year, is Partner to Connect. And definitely for younger people to be able to get on the bandwagon of, you know, economic activities, they definitely need an incentivized environment. So thank you very much for that. I'm now going to invite Ms. Manik, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Ms. Sine. It is such a pleasure to be a part of such a distinguished panel. Thank you very much for having me here. So over the past few years, Serbia has really been keen on putting digital transformation as one of the key priorities of the government. And we really perceive digitalization as a necessity and as a way to provide better public services, to increase the competitiveness and to have a better job market and a better business environment. And the coronavirus pandemic that we all had in all of our countries really showed that this decision to turn into digital to increase innovation has really been not just a good one, but a crucial one. And these years of technology-driven reforms actually made us resilient in the time that we live in now. So in Serbia, currently all the building blocks of e-government are currently in place. So we have a state-of-the-art data center that's one of the best in the region. All the public registers are digitalized and all the institutions are communicated through an interoperable network. So that was really important when the pandemic hit, to have all these building blocks already in place when the whole world turned digital, when all the forums turned digital, when all the meetings turned online. And one of the things that we are really proud of when it comes to the way how we dealt with the crisis is the immunization management system. So in Serbia, we had a buffet, and we still have a buffet of vaccines. So people can choose which manufacturer they want, and they get an SMS saying where they should come and what time is their vaccination appointment. And the management system is very complex because, as I said, there are 4 different vaccines. So you have to match the citizen with their preferred vaccines. And the whole logistics is done through this AI-powered platform that actually tracks the vaccine. As soon as it lands in Serbia, it is connected to the person that will receive it. So the system went flawlessly, and we had a very, very large number of vaccinations daily, and we were among the countries with the fastest vaccination rollout in the beginning. We also had the Innovation Fund of Serbia. It designed and it immediately launched, when the pandemic hit, a public call to get innovative IT solutions that can help tackle all the circumstances of the pandemic. And finally, children, that's also one of the things that we're very, very proud of. So in Serbia, children didn't lose a single day of school. So as soon as the emergency state was declared, on Monday, all the kids went online to schools. So everything was in place, and they didn't have any breaks like children usually like, but there were no breaks. So with the pandemic or without it, children didn't lose a single day of school. And not just that, but people could do their shopping online, they can do their public services online, go to school. So all in all, really, I think, and I'm really proud of how Serbia tackled the crisis. They say that you should never waste a good crisis. And I think Serbia really passed that exam with flying colors. So actually what is happening now is that demand for public services is so increased that we are so busy here as the Prime Minister's office and in the whole government to meet that increased demand that even, in our wildest imagination, we couldn't foresee. So thank you very much, and look forward to the continuous debate on this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manik. And this is absolutely impressive, really. I mean, you might be some of the few countries where kids, did not miss a day of school. That is really very nice to hear. And I can only say, all of us need to just
and grow, support and nurture the ecosystem and make it thrive. The ecosystem must do a variety of things to help entrepreneurs. They might run an accelerator or provide educational program or teach entrepreneurship necessary skills. Many organize events, demo day.
There we go. I'm back. Sorry about that. So let's go now to our question round. And I would like to start with Mr. Willem Castro. Your Excellency, please share with us, why is it important to nurture entrepreneurship that drives economic development?
Thank you very much, Ms. Rochelle. Well, we believe here in the Ministry of Science and Technology in Costa Rica that knowledge and technology, they must go for public welfare. They must go for problem solving, and they must go for economic growth in a solidarity sense, and especially in the frame of the pandemic. And with this, I would like to say that in Costa Rica, 60% of the different companies are small or micro, and 70%, and they give 70% of the formal employment in Costa Rica. So we have a huge mass of small companies, and in order to promote that, we needed to establish enablers, different instruments, and I wanted to recall a couple in the sense of showing how this innovation is important from the for the economic growth to nurture this entrepreneurship. And the first, and I would say one of the most impactful measures was the creation of an agency that promotes innovation and research. It used to be a council to direct research, and then it transformed into this agency, which has a strong level of autonomy, so it could move sometimes without this slow procedures and bureaucracy that sometimes in our governments are common, and it integrates academia, it integrates industry, and it integrates government institutions in a balance of representation that allows to take easy and agile decisions, but also ensures representativity. The law that enabled it came with such weight that we had to change the name of the ministry we had to include technology in the name. So now it's Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, and then innovation as well. Because it put a lot of focus of innovation in this particular ministry, but it also comes aligned with the Ministry of Economics and Industry and Commerce. This is supposed to come along with the Space Agency and also the Electronic or Digital Government Agency that have to work in synergy with the leadership of the ministry to enable and promote this whole innovation through entrepreneurship paradigm. We also worked on a second measure, which is called innovation laboratories, which are aimed to go to different rural areas. We tried to cover all the different regions in Costa Rica to establish this culture of innovation. And I think this term is very important because the culture of innovation, since kids and especially girls embrace this innovation spirit, then that drives very strongly the innovation and entrepreneurship movement, especially in regions, which in Costa Rica, these regions normally have a larger gap. I would say that these innovation laboratories, which have been quite a challenge to fund, but we've finally managed it, they democratize innovation in some way. We launched a digital maturity self-diagnosis tool online with the Inter-American Development Bank, so that companies and especially small businesses could evaluate how mature they are in terms of digital. And this enables them not only to involve in innovative processes, but also to consume innovative technologies. And that is also very important in terms of promoting not just the offer of innovation, but also the consumption of innovation in the whole dynamics. We launched bioeconomics strategy, nationwide, which is important for circular economy and to establish this balance between agriculture and technology, which in Costa Rica, agriculture is a very important factor, and also tourism. And for this, we have been working with the different ministries to promote a national plan of electronic commerce, and this aimed not just industry but also tourism to enable many of the different platforms that they require. This goes, and I would like to just close my intervention with the development of a national, it's called society and economics that are based on knowledge. And this is important for us because this policy, which is a nationwide policy of society and economics based on knowledge, yes, now I managed to say it, is like an umbrella that drives a national science and technology and innovation plan, that drives a telecommunications development plan, and that drives the digital government plan, and also reaches up to commerce, tourism, and agriculture. We've had like a specific and very very convenient frame in which many of these policies were closing their cycle, and they were to be rethought and re-proposed. And then we in just between 2020 and 2021, so we had this opportunity to propose them in not just the frame of attending the economic growth and the pandemic, but also to see towards the future, because we don't know what's going to come in the future. Well, we know there's 5G, and we know there's Wi-Fi 6, and we know there's lots of IoT and industry, but we don't know if there is going to be what type of challenges that we need to face. So I think it's fundamental to attend to nurture this entrepreneurship for innovation to different enablers and different promoters that can enable them for this economic regrowth in which we are facing. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's you're hitting all the right words. I mean, I like to hear that, you know, rural communities, that girls, that, you know, most of the ones that we tend to think, or not only tend to think, that are actually disadvantaged, are really taken care of in Costa Rica. So thank you very much. And I'll probably come back to you with a follow-up question. But for now, what I'm going to do, I think Dr. Hassel has to leave us soon. So I would like to go to her and ask her, so what do you think is the role of entrepreneurship-driven innovation for future-proofing communities against all of the disasters and crises that, you know, just like COVID-19, we know will be probably on our way? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that innovation should be our driver. I mean, also at the government level, for many reasons. But it should be our driver also when we talk about services offered to the public, but also should be a driver when we talk about developing SMEs, developing the private sector, because this is like a chain. So if we develop right in the right way, and we incentivize, as I said before, the right people and the young population in order to be self-employed, to open their startups, to enter into the digital world, this will spin off certain effects on the economy. So we in Albania have invested, let's say, in both directions. We have invested in transforming, let's say, all the services, the e-government services, in transforming all services in Albania and transforming them in online services. So let's say that we have until now in the e-Albania platform 95% of the public services. So everything, let's say almost everything is there. So people can take documents, businesses can download documents from this platform. No need to go to the offices, business offices, etc. So their life is made more easier. So there have been about 1,206 services which are online for the moment. And now we are working on improving those services, which is also a challenge. But let's say that we have done most of the work. Then when it comes to the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, what we have done is that we have started developing a program, because my unit leads the development programs in the country. So one of these programs is a program called Innovation and Startups. We have partnered with development institutions and organizations in order to draft this program, which is like an operational program with measures that we need to take in order to develop the startup ecosystem in Albania. Of course, there have been many challenges, and there are a lot of challenges, but we have managed to have the first draft of this program, and we have also managed to have a first draft of the law on startups, on how to incentivize startups, and also to make the difference, because in Albania, people couldn't make the difference between what is an innovative SME and what is a startup. So, and then once this is clarified, then what are the incentives that the government gives to startups in order to thrive? So we have the law that we are working on, we have the program that we are working on. We are also starting working on the development of an ICT hub, ICT cluster, like a pilot cluster, and then move on with other clusters in Albania. But we believe that ICT is the right sector to start this. Another thing that we have been doing is working with the World Bank actually to develop a program that is based on developing the skills for women. Women mainly that are also, because of the pandemic, were left at home. They couldn't go to their work, or they couldn't find works because they were laid off. So these women, in order to have access in online working platforms, and also to develop the skills they need in order to access these platforms and start making, let's say, earning from these platforms. This project has just started, let's say. It has a couple of months that it started. It's going very well. There is a high range of women that want to be part of this project. And if it goes well, we'll probably continue it also in the years to come. Another thing is the e-commerce that we are working on. It started from the pandemic year, and we also had this big working group with many actors from the government and from other institutions in order to see what are, let's say, the blocking stones in terms of e-commerce in Albania and how to unblock them and how we could all work together, comprising the private sector, in order to develop better, let's say, the e-commerce. Another thing, and I'll finish with this, is the smart specialization strategy, which we are working on drafting. We are in the phase of involving the private sector in order to get the opinion of the private sector on the sectors of the economy that have an innovative potential for the future. So this is, let's say, the aim of this smart specialization strategy. We have already identified the 5 sectors, and we are now engaging with the private sector in a series of interviews, then a series of workshops to follow in order to get their real opinion of what they think, if they think that actually these sectors identified are the right sectors, or if we need to include another sector that we haven't caught from the data we analyzed. And then to see together what kind of capacities they need to develop in the private sector in order to be able to prevent any setback when, let's say, crises happen in the future, and in order to be better, let's say, equipped in order to develop these sectors further. So this is where we are in Albania, and I'm really sorry that I have to leave, but I have a reported meeting. So if you excuse me, it was a pleasure being part of this panel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassel, and it was a pleasure having you, and we hope you'll come back again another time. And we're really glad to see that Albania is looking into also the future. You know, I mean, innovation is definitely what we can do now, but as you said, you know, looking at the data, what is it that we can do further, you know, going forward? So thank you very much for having been with us, and hope to see you on another time on another panel, maybe, or face to face if we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's hope. Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you. So my next question is now going to go to Her Excellency Ms. Yonan to share insights on how projects of the Ministry of Digital Transformation help small and medium-sized businesses grow during a pandemic.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. Well, actually, our ministry has a lot of different projects which are devoted to the small and medium entrepreneurs. One of the most important projects to my mind is a DIA business project. It is a project which has 2 components. The first one is a one-stop shop for future and existing entrepreneurs. So this one-stop shop has lots of different free services and products, starting with 70 different types of free consultations for entrepreneurs in the areas of financial management, HR, marketing, sales, and export, and ending up with a marketplace of financial products, impact investment platform, expert platform, and everything. So actually, when there is a person who would like to start their business, or when there is an entrepreneur who would like to grow his business and to find some very necessary information on the, let's say, export or on the e-services for entrepreneurs, they could find everything on this one-stop shop. So only in a year, the DIA business portal has been visited by more than 1 million of Ukrainian entrepreneurs, and more than 10,000 of consultations were provided. More than 20,000 of Ukrainian people, of Ukrainian entrepreneurs, has started to study at in the online school for entrepreneurs at the DIA business. What is more important also is the second component of the project, which is the network of offline hubs or support centers for entrepreneurs DIA business. businesses are facilitated where you can get free consultations on how to start or grow your business, attend educational events for free, rent spaces, test their product at a special pop-up location before entering the market. So now DIA business centers are opened in 7 cities of Ukraine, and till the end of this year, we will have already 11 centers. In the next 3 years, we plan to cover all the country with such hubs, which really help entrepreneurs to grow. Also, we have the DIA portal, which is the state portal of e-services. And this portal makes it possible to quickly get a public service online without the participation of government. More than 50 services are available on the portal, including fastest business registration in the world. It allows you to become an entrepreneur only in 15 minutes, for example. Also, we have another project which is called DIA City, which is a special legal and tax regime that creates favorable conditions for the development of IT businesses in Ukraine. So there are special components of this regime, which is a favorable tax system, flexible forms of cooperation with IT specialists, namely gig contracts, combine the benefits of freelance and social guarantees, intellectual property protection guarantees, elements of English law that facilitate access to investment, guarantees of protection of the person and property from illegal intervention. Thanks to this special regime, IT companies will pay lower taxes, and they will be able to build a transparent corporate structure through the introduction of gig contracts as an alternative to the practice of attracting sole proprietors. Also, we'll have better access to investment through enhanced protection of investor interests and intellectual property rights. So we also are working now on the project which is called e-residence. And especially we are working on the bill, which is on the peculiarities of taxation of e-residents that will provide an opportunity for e-residents of Ukraine to conduct businesses. We have done some first steps in this direction. So 4,100 potential e-residents have already registered on the portal. One of the goals of our ministry is to create favorable conditions for business development in Ukraine and to turn our country into a country of entrepreneurs. We simplify all the bureaucratic processes and introduce modern online services to make business communication with the state as convenient and transparent as possible. Thank you.
Impressive again, really, really impressive. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be the only one relishing the words like one-stop shop, support center, low taxation. Entrepreneurs will definitely love those. And I'm pretty sure some people are thinking and, keeping that in mind. So thank you very much, Ms. Yona. And now I'm going to go to Mr. Sokbutuvu to share insights into the challenges and opportunities of the digital transformation key sectors such as agriculture and in the context of the pandemic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Ann Rachel. Thank you for the questions. I think the pandemic, for better or worse, have definitely speed up, the rate of innovation, the rate of accepting to new ideas. I think Cambodia is no different than other countries. Also, quickly, I'd like to congratulate Serbia, for helping the student to not miss a day of school. I think most of the world, I think parents has to become teacher again for almost a year to try to keep the kids keep up with school. So this is an amazing achievement. I think Cambodia side has always maybe was not prepared, but I think we're pushing at the moment. We're pushing on a new platform for digital education, that platform that hopefully will help students to prepare for this kind of situation in the future. But in Cambodia, we have a natural endowment in terms of agriculture. Flat land, a lot of water. So agriculture has always been part of Cambodia for many generations. And we're seeing it evolving. I think even with the pandemic, there are more technology coming into the sector. The farmers need to learn and scale, and not necessarily good, but I think that I think to consider sustainability into the factors, because I think sometimes, I mean, there's new entrepreneurs and a lot of more new entrepreneurs in the agriculture sector, especially with the technology that we have. But agriculture has not gained a lot of that attention with the new technology that we have. So most youth are moving into other sectors rather than agriculture. But I think in the next coming years, we can see there's a changes, there's a shift in interest, because with anticipations of global population reaching 10 billion in 2050, I think there's going to be a big pressure on food security, and I think Cambodia still have a lot of potential to expand on that front. We still have land, and compared to the region, I think Cambodia still has a big land that allow farming to be, I guess, more innovative in terms of using technology. I think right now we can see, there are move toward development of agriculture, like a big scale agriculture. It's a challenge to balance that between small scale and large scale farming. So that we're piloting some model like the nucleus model, where big farms support smaller farms, but it's still in progress. But we can see there are big farms that are moving rapidly in terms of using technology, and hopefully, I mean, there are new ideas in terms of pushing sustainability for this kind of big farm. I think farming is you can improve the soil every time you use it. And I think there are ideas in terms of using technology to help us do that, even at the larger scale. So we, I think at the government level, we're trying to find ways or support the business who are thinking in that direction. But at the end, I think the economic incentive is very strong. So the competition for global competition is still a major force to deal with. I think government need to think about pushing entrepreneurs and new businesses, entrepreneurs with a purpose, I guess, not just entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. I think entrepreneurs to solve a problem, and entrepreneurs as ambassador, maybe to champion certain things. I think that's something that the government should support, although it's difficult. I think every country should think, because I think we're facing a lot of global problems that, as a result of strong competition economically and creating a lot of externality. And that's why I mentioned the word circular economy is that the future that we all should aim for. Maybe the other ideas like shared economy or fourth industrial revolution, that using all these tools, can all these tools help us reach something like that in the future? Would be very interesting to see. And I hope that every country can support each other, because I think Cambodia is small. I don't think we can afford to experiment with a lot of ideas, but we like to see countries who are innovative, taking initiative on this, and then share experience with the rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Putuve. Indeed, I mean, the circular economy is as much about making sure that we work holistically in our own countries, but also globally, helping each other. And, we can definitely tap into what is a comparative advantage to a country like Cambodia that has land and, as you said, plenty water, with others that maybe, are lacking such advantages. So thank you very much. All right, my last question is going to go to Ms. Manik. And I would like you to give us your views on how to use digital transformation of government services to prepare for future crises like the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ine. So as I shared in my introductory remarks, the whole country of Serbia is mobilized under the digital agenda, but now we have another challenge ahead, and that is to ensure, because that is our responsibility, to ensure that all citizens can actually benefit from these efforts. And the way how we do it is to really increase digital literacy and digital connectivity for all citizens. So when it comes to digital literacy, first thing is, of course, education. So we are really working on reforming our educational system, introducing digital classrooms and digital schools, so digital textbooks and internet access in all schools. This is a landmark project that has been replicated in several other European countries, and it really allows students the opportunity to access information online and to really become digital creators. We have also introduced coding and programming in elementary schools. And now we have a first we have the first cohort of graduated programmers that are only 14 years old, who already know how to use Python and Scratch. Even kids from 7 years old are learning algorithmic thinking and about the digital world. And we're also working on informal education, which is also really important. So we have a lot of retraining programs in IT. And we currently have over 2,000 people who have retrained and were either employed or they changed their career path as a result of these retraining programs. Of course, public servants and policymakers really need to be aware of the innovation and the way where the world is heading. And that is why we have created state-of-the-art programs on design thinking, on data sciences, and emerging technologies for public servants. And I'm really proud to say that even the Prime Minister, who always leads by example, signed up for one of these programs to really, because it's really important for everyone in the decision-making to understand the processes, to understand machine learning and Internet of Things and robotics and so on. The public servants will also have a sophisticated AI platform that will be available for them for complex data analytics, predictive analysis, and so on. And in addition to this literacy and education and knowledge, it is really important for everyone to be connected, as Ms. Bogdan-Martin said in the previous session. And this is our overarching goal, is to provide broadband to 99% of households in Serbia by 2025. And the way how we will do it is by incentivizing rural broadband in Serbia. So that is how households in sparsely located areas will get high-speed broadband internet access. So really, to conclude, digital transformation is really the greatest driver for change in any society. And I think that the Serbian government is an example that investing in technology is really a game changer. And another great piece of news and info that we always like to share with our colleagues from around the world is that through going digital, through introducing e-services, we have managed to reduce our carbon footprint by saving huge amounts of paper. Actually, 23,000 trees were saved and 97 million liters of water and 8,000 megawatt hours of electricity were saved because we switched to digital, because there are no printing of papers, there are no forms, there are no decisions, everything is done digitally. So I think that is another added value of digitalization, not just convenience, but also it's great for the environment, which is such an important thing in the world we live in. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Living a world for all of the children. So yes, the data is there to show us that it is true. Technology, I read somewhere in one of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa latest papers, they said that technology contributes to about 2% of the carbon footprint globally, but it can actually really bring back 15% of economic benefit. So the data is there to show it. You have definitely worked with it, and thanks for sharing this with us. And I think people will really definitely keep that in mind. Another thing is, yes, retraining for skills. It is very important that, all of the people who may, for one reason or another, have lost, any of the jobs that are traditional are now reskilled in terms of being part of this new economy that we're trying to foster. So thank you very, very much all. I mean, this has been really incredible, and I've learned a lot. And, you know, if you don't mind, I will come back to you, you know, as we go, because I think my region will definitely benefit in some of the projects that we're having with ITU, anywhere from, you know, coding, girls for, you know, coding in reforms of education sector, agriculture, you know, the one-stop shops, name it. It is really, really important that we share those good practices. So given that we're practically out of time, I am going to give each one of you 30 seconds to give us a takeaway and on how do we achieve an inclusive economy by leapfrogging the pandemic and future crises through digital innovation. So 30 seconds for each one of you. And I will start with Ms. Yonan.
Always a pleasure to be the first one. Well, thank you so much. Well, I would probably summarize that our main goal of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine is to provide people with the technical access and necessary skills to freely use digital tools. So the development of their businesses and doing daily activities remotely will be easily and accessible for everyone, despite restrictions caused by a pandemic or any other crisis. So it is very important for everyone to digitalize and to remember that there is no more economy, there is only digital economy, and digital transformation is a red line, which is everywhere in every industry, in medicine, in healthcare, in education, in infrastructure. So it is very important to understand that we are entering the new era, I would say, of digital transformation. And you want it or you don't want it, but you're already a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yonan. And I will go now to His Excellency, Mr. Willie Castro. Please, you have the floor.
I actually was going to talk about synergy between academia, government, the private sector, and society, but I just recalled something that Ms. Doreen Bogdan said in the opening speech, and I would like to just go crazy. And she talked about that this might be one of the opportunities, and I wanted to go for the governments and say, well, let's enable and promote crazy. And to the entrepreneurs and business people to embrace crazy, and to the whole environment to take advantage of crazy, to not just overcome this pandemic, but understand that it's not about only economic growth, but welfare of people and leaving nobody behind. So that would be my final 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Let's be inclusive. Let's make it happen. And the same mindset is not going to get us there. So thanks so much, Mr. Willie Castro. Mr. Putovic?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very important, I think, history and time of the world that I think all leaders of every country should take this opportunity to to see what can happen globally, and one issue could create so much problem, but it's also an opportunity to bring on new ideas and bringing people together. I think is easier. A bit more easier to bring people on the same table in response to the crisis that we face. And yeah, I think this is an opportunity that, although it's tragic, but I think we have to be prepared. I think digital transformation that are happening around the world with this push from COVID-19 is something that we have to deal with. But I think there's no excuse to not do things. I think with digital technology, you can be very inclusive. You can use very little resources, with just ideas, and I think there's no excuse that we don't provide a more inclusive platform for all citizens. I think technology today is so powerful that I think all leaders should consider using it, but at the same time be more cautious as well in terms of the data security, data privacy. I think this is something that in another discussion where how we want to govern a new society and a digital society. But I think technology could help us achieve many things, speed up many things. But at the same time, we need to design our own society in the technology space that all the countries and has to be involved in terms of dictating that society for each country and also for the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We cannot be complacent, especially in the face of security online. And I think we owe it to our people to make sure that, when they come online, everything is, perfect for them also. Ms. Manik, you have the last word. So thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, I would just like to summarize, and it I think for me, the key takeaway is that really the pandemic proved that all the investments that were made in digital transformation proved to be crucial. And I just think that it is up to us, up to the government, but also up to all the other stakeholders to educate, to enable, and to support the digital innovation ecosystem for the future, to be more resilient and to be more innovative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manik. And one of the things that I will retain from this panel that is all government is that you are all open to multi-stakeholder going forward and making sure that we are all inclusive in the way we want to build this and accelerate this economic inclusion. So thank you very much for being part of this panel. Thanks for having been with us for the Global Innovation Forum 2021, and really looking forward to staying in touch with you. And thanks again for being part of ITU. Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah, hope to invite you to Cambodia one day. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Max, I think you have the floor now again.
Good afternoon, dear participants, and welcome to the next conversation on the whole of ecosystem approach to mainstreaming entrepreneurship-driven innovation as part of the Global Innovation Forum 2021. Welcome. And we're back to Stanford Good. Welcome again to the next conversation on the topic of the whole of ecosystem approach to mainstreaming entrepreneurship-driven innovation. And that's part of the 2021 Global Innovation Forum. It is a mouthful, but I can promise that it will be a fascinating session, and hopefully there will be important takeaways for all of you too. My name is Yulia Lozanova, and I'm Senior Analyst with the Policy and Regulatory Team of the Development Bureau of ITU, and it's a very great pleasure for me to moderate today's discussion. Before we begin, a couple of things to keep in mind. This session will be brought live to you on Swapcard. Participants can use the chat to comment and the Q&A box to ask questions. Participants are also invited to connect directly. Please use our hashtags, Rediscover Innovation and Ecosystem Building, to join the conversation on social media. If you wish to listen in, you can do so in any of the UN languages on Zoom. And remember, you can only ask questions on Swapcards and in English, please. In addition to being live streamed, this session is recorded and it will be archived and published on ITU's website and the Swapcard event space. So we are now ready to start. We have 90 minutes and a very ambitious task ahead of us. So we'll dive into it straight away. A whole of ecosystem approach to mainstreaming entrepreneurship-driven innovation. Many countries have enjoyed massive investment in ICT ecosystems in recent years, and yet in many places, the impact is slow to be felt on the ground. In some countries, there are very few investment channels available, and the global economic slowdown has resulted in fewer opportunities of financing for greenfield ventures. The roles of stakeholders in the ecosystem are changing, and governments, entrepreneurs, the broader private sector, entrepreneurial support networks, and financiers, as well as academia, are all looking for a new balance of power and collaboration, which needs to match the new realities and generate new opportunities. The enabling environment needed to create competitive and innovation-driven ecosystem, which boosts economic wealth and jobs, are lacking in many places, often those that need them most. And this session will bring together the voices of all stakeholder groups to pinpoint the needs and expectations of the ecosystem builders and explore some of the challenges through the views and experiences of the stakeholders we have here on the panel. This is going to be a multidimensional panel, and our excellent speakers will be co-creating the outcome of this session together with the audience. So I would now like to invite the ITU's Innovation Ecosystem Builder-in-Chief and coordinator of the Global Innovation Forum, Mo Ba, to briefly introduce how the audience can co-create with the panel. Mo.
Thank you, Julia. I don't know if you can see me, but thank you again, everybody, and welcome to hopefully what will be a very wonderful panel. We will be co-creating with you, or at least with the audience, using Mural, and we will be putting the link of Mural in the Swapcard chat app. So please go ahead and you can follow the flow and put your ideas, and we'll try to organize them and share at the end of this session. With that, Julia, I'll turn the floor back to you, but I'll come back at the end to a bit share what the conversation was about and what the audience is telling us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mo. This is very clear. I hope it's also clear for the audience. And there we go. I will now give the floor to our panelists to introduce themselves, so they can correct me if I happen to inadvertently contort their names. I'll call on each of you to say a few words about yourselves, your role in the ecosystem, your organization, and which stakeholder group you represent here on the panel. in 1 minute, please. I'll start with Mr. Andras Jombati. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Andras, to make it simple, and I'm actually have an experience in venture capital fund management for the last 20 years in Hungary, especially focusing on early stage startups and companies, high growth companies who develop innovative technology and willing to expand outside the country borders. So that's one of my qualities being here. The other is that I'm a VC in residence in Input program, which is a government funded program aiming to help these startups in their business development challenges and also in the fundraising arena. So that's it from my side.
Thank you very much. We can now move to the next panelist. I shall say that I'm introducing the panelists in alphabetical order of their first names. So Daniel Oban, you're next, please.
Thank you, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor as well. I'm Daniel Obam from Kenya. I work at an organization called the National Communication Secretariat. That organization, I lead a team of cross-functional experts, lawyers, economists, and engineers. And we help develop policies and strategies related to the ICT sector, which then inform developments that take place in the sector. And of course, digital transformation being the discussion now with the process of developing a national digital economy strategy. I'll be looking at the lens of the role of government in supporting the innovative entrepreneurship ecosystem. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And indeed, the role of governments and your role in Kenya have been very important. So we look forward to hearing from you. I'm inviting now Mr. Jess to introduce himself, please.
Thank you so much, and thanks also for having me on the panel. It's a great pleasure. My name is Jess Peterson. I'm from Denmark, but I've spent most of my career working in technology and in emerging and frontier markets. I've founded and co-founded a few tech startups myself. And over the last 5 years, I've served as the CEO of Pandia, which is a Myanmar-based innovation hub. Pandia has invested in tech startups, worked with stakeholders, both from the private sector and from government, to promote entrepreneurship and train entrepreneurs, and to advocate for a more inclusive and responsible tech ecosystem and landscape in Myanmar. Now, of course, because of recent events in Myanmar, we've had to reduce the size of the organization significantly, and I stepped back from my role earlier this year, and I'm now based in Bangkok with my family. But it's fair to say that I'm very passionate about startup ecosystem building, and I'm really looking forward to discuss more today about how we can all do even better job of that in the future.
That sounds fascinating. I look forward to hearing more about that. And now we move on to Mr. Jonathan Naidu. Jonathan?
Thank you, Program Director, and greetings to my esteemed panelists and our viewers. I'm Jonathan Naidu from Durban, South Africa. I'm the CEO of a business incubator called the Durban Technology Hub, trading a smart exchange. We focus on the MIC-T sector: media, information, communications, technology, electronics, and arts. The arts came in because of the swift change from education STEM to STEAM. And so that's why we're trying to be relevant. We've been in existence since 2004, makes us 17 years old. We've got 72 startups at any given time on average in our ecosystem. To date, we've graduated 220 companies. We've created 3,000 jobs, cumulative turnover of 2 billion rand. And we've excited to announce that we've had one unicorn company listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange called Adapt IT. And I'm also a recipient of the ITU 2019 Global Challenge winner under the category Ecosystem Best Practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm sure you have a great contribution to put forward on the panel, and looking forward to Muskan Fatima. our youngest and a very dynamic panelist. The floor is yours, Muskan.
Hello everyone, I'm Muskan Fatma and I'll be speaking as the winner of the Generation Connect Challenge. I currently work with an AI-based startup and I also volunteer and serve as the student ambassador of an organization that focuses on career development and personal growth of female entrepreneurs, specifically in Pakistan. I really look forward to today's discussion and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us. This is definitely very a fresh look at the panel and the issues we will be looking at. Next on my list, I have Shailene Jyotishi. Shailene, please introduce yourself.
Thanks so very much, Julia. It's an honor to be with you all today. Hello from Washington, D.C. My name is Shailene Jyotishi. I'm a senior analyst at a think tank called New America, based here in Washington, and a fellow in artificial intelligence at the World Economic Forum. The perspective I'd like to bring to today's session is the role of colleges and universities in fostering innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems. Over the past 10 years or so, I've served in various research, advisory, and policy capacities to university presidents and chancellors, vice chancellors for research, as well as research park directors, incubators, and accelerators across the US and beyond. So would really like to bring that sort of academic perspective to the conversation today, as well as a little bit of a perspective around science and innovation policy. That's an area that I also study as a researcher. And think it's pertinent to this discussion. So looking forward to our conversation. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you, Shailene. Indeed, a very complimentary perspective, and we all look forward to hearing from you too. And last but not least, we have with us Ms. Victoria Maron. Victoria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, for having me. My name is Victoria Maron, and I am a venture partner at the accelerator based in Southern California. We are the biggest international accelerator fund based in Southern California. I'm originally Iranian, so born and raised in Iran. So building an ecosystem and helping developing countries like Africa and the Middle East is on my agenda, and I'm very, very happy that I can be part of this group to share and add value.
I'm sure you will. Thank you very much, Victoria, for joining us too. Thank you once again to all the panelists. As the audience can appreciate, we have voices representing all groups of ecosystem builders. Loud and clear voices that will take us through our explorative journey today. To kick off the conversation, we will start with a discovery segment around the needs of stakeholders and the essential ingredients of the ecosystem. What does each group of stakeholders need from the others? This first exploration will form the inner layer of the ecosystem basics canvas, and we will keep building on it through the following segments. So please keep your interventions brief so we can all have equal speaking opportunity and we enjoy a fluid and diverse discussion. Thank you very much in advance. And to explore that question of the needs of every stakeholder group, I think it's perfectly appropriate to start with this discussion with an entrepreneurial perspective. So Jess, would you give us your first words?
I will do my best. Thanks. So, one thing that came up for me when I was thinking through the panel today and looking at the brief is that one premise of this discussion is that a lot of ecosystems where stakeholders have invested in ecosystem development are not doing that well, or results have been slow to materialize. But I think in thinking about that, it's really important that we all ask ourselves, both as entrepreneurs and as ecosystem builders, compared to what, right? Because a lot of us here have spent a lot of time working in emerging markets or in countries that are not sort of at the forefront of technological development. But on the other hand, often when you talk to ecosystem builders, and that could be, by the way, both governments or private sector or independent organizations, you get a sense that they're trying to create interventions through a certain lens, that lens very often being, well, the Silicon Valley model of innovation, right? And obviously that's a huge inspiration. But I think what's missing often is really, when you look at how can we grow ecosystems, is the local cultural component, right? And really at a very deep level, right? Understanding, well, what do folks need in order to grow? People like me who have spent a lot of time thinking about those questions typically do one of two things: either identifying and supporting the individuals who will one day contribute to these tech ecosystems by building skills and community and providing resources to individuals who are not yet entrepreneurs, but who might one day be. That's one thing. Or as identifying and supporting the businesses created by those people, right? Through investment, through mentorship, through one-stop shops that we heard about earlier today, other types of government support, and so on and so forth. And those things can be very powerful, or then they can be not so relevant. And when they're not so relevant, at least in my experience, it's often when the stakeholders, the folks designing these interventions, forget or leave out really understanding at a deep level, well, what is it entrepreneurs need? Where are the gaps? It may be skills, it may not be skills, it may be investment, or it may not be investment. But often it's not very complicated, right? Often it doesn't even require tons of investment. Sometimes it can be really simple things. Sometimes it takes a bit more effort, but asking ourselves that question is really key. And then the second thing is having patience, right? Because there's not going to be any short-term, large-scale results are rare, right? So having the patience to see through these processes and see through an inclusive ecosystem building with long-term powerful results rather than short-term vanity metrics or otherwise that may not really move the needle. Those are some of the key points I wanted to raise here.
Thank you very much. Those are indeed very important key points. I think the relevance of the local context comes up in all discussions, and that's indeed important to keep in mind. Muskan, from your perspective and from your work for a startup, you see the struggles of startups every day. What does your startup and startups in general need from the other stakeholder groups in the ecosystem?
So that is a great question. While everyone is aware of the main issues of entrepreneurship, such as thriving on limited resources and battling competition and surviving in a constantly changing climate with high risks, entrepreneurship is really different in developing countries than it is in developed countries. So today I'll be shedding light on two main issues which are not that often brought up. So one of is basically the gap between the entrepreneurs and the general population. So the startup which I work with, they're known as Slosh AI, is basically focused on machine learning solutions to aid doctors in early diagnosis of different cancers and tumors. So as we all know that artificial intelligence is all about data. You need massive data sets to train the algorithm so they can see the patterns. What we discovered was that people had this fear of AI technology and automation, like it was lurking underneath. So while a normal level of fear is perfectly fine, I mean, I know I love sci-fi movies, but it was still a rude awakening to find this deep ingrained fear within the general population. I would see my colleagues struggle with obtaining data from medical institutions and from health professionals. Not every country is equally welcoming to innovation. Many people fear that AI will also, replace them or, start making poor decisions. And it's very broad from a technical perspective, but, it always boils down to people thinking that the decision is just not right. And, due to this, tech startups face a lot of difficulty in such a climate. And, the second biggest issue that I, saw my startup face was that, the success of a female-led startup is always contributed to the fact that they're female. Our startup won, numerous awards, hackathon, grants, funds, you name it. However, the achievements are always downplayed because people think that just because your startup is, female, you have had those accomplishments. Whereas, all of the other factors such as teamwork and the innovative solution to the problem that is, that we're looking forward to solve is just, overlooked. So, in summary, despite already the other present challenges, such as, gender discrimination from, venture capitalist investors during funding, if you're a female entrepreneur, even winning is hard for you. However, I would like to add that the situation is not that grim. The newer generations are constantly questioning things, and they're all about challenging the status quo. So we still have a long way to go, go to foster the gender, equality in the startup world. And other than that, I believe that there should be, collaboration with the government to create more awareness among the general population. Because no matter how revolutionary your idea is, if the people aren't ready, then your efforts will be in vain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. I guess if I were to summarize your 2 points into one, probably there is more work to be done on mindsets and really changing mindsets. And that reminds me of what the Deputy Minister of Serbia brought in during the first panel. She said, supporting innovation is everyone's job. So it's also about that, being sure that everyone understands that innovation can bring solutions and can be good for everyone, even if we don't necessarily understand or appreciate everything it brings in its first wave. Thank you very much indeed. Shailene, we will move to you and get a little bit of a more academic perspective on the topic. You led a research program at the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, and that was around research and development and innovation ecosystems. So from your lens, what did you find governments need from the other stakeholders in the ecosystem to nurture entrepreneurship-driven innovation, and why?
Thank you, Yulia. Great comments from Muskan and Jess to kick us off. I think my perspective will, of course, be from the United States lens. That's where I've worked with universities most frequently. I think there are a couple of things that governments can do to enable their universities to be incubators of innovation and entrepreneurship. I also wanted to share a program that everyone in the audience can make use of. It's the University Innovation Fellowship at the Hassel Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford University. This is actually a program that equips students on university and college campuses to be the builders of their own entrepreneurial ecosystems. I was actually a fellow myself about 10 years ago, but this is a free program that's international in scope. So I always like to give specifics when I give these types of talks. So that's one specifics, University Innovation Fellowship. There are a couple of levels here. I think when it comes to fostering a university environment for students to be more entrepreneurially innovative, it's all the things that we've talked about. It's access to capital, it's sort of awareness, it's the creative space to think out of the box and have that count towards your academic progression. But a couple of things in particular came out as first and foremost. Oftentimes, entrepreneurship is seen as very high stakes, right? You have to like really hustle and make it, or you fail and you fail fast, and it's sort of that whole mindset. I think that latter mindset is not very well supported among colleges and universities. I would love for more federal programs to support university students, graduate and undergraduate, with entrepreneurship projects as part of their typical course of work. This has been a specific example at a couple of campuses. You have MIT and Stanford, but even public institutions like the University of Washington and Georgia Tech, whereby to graduate, you either complete your senior thesis or a capstone project, or you participate in an entrepreneurial venture. And this is built into the program of study. Both of those, all four institutions I mentioned, top the list of patents awarded for academics, as well as markers for student entrepreneurship. So fostering a university and collegiate environment for students, I think, is really valuable here. Now, when it comes to the academics, that's where most university-born innovation entrepreneurship comes from. I mean, it was universities that helped sort of create Silicon Valley in many ways. I'll get to that in my next response to the following question. But when it comes to faculty, strong intellectual property protections, I think, are actually a really important piece here. There have been lots of examples where academic researchers might have come up with an interesting idea, but because of the tech transfer process and patenting process being sort of a little bit loose in their countries, their ideas have escaped, and they haven't really been able to do the lab to market functions that they initially intended. There are some examples of nations putting in place policies to circumvent this. The famous one in the US is the Bayh-Dole Act, which sort of moved patents awarded from federally funded research to the university and campus level. But I think that's something that governments ought to think about. If you want your faculty and your professors and your academics at your universities, whether or not you have the infrastructure of the US or you're still a developing emerging ecosystem, if you want them to be entrepreneurs and create innovation-born ventures, what does the intellectual property environment look like, and how are you going to really educate those faculty around those uses? This has been a big pain point in the US, although there are two organizations I'd like to flag as resources for those of you in the audience who are thinking, yes, I want my university to be more entrepreneurial. I want my faculty to do this work, but I don't really know how to get them the resources they need. The Association of University Technology Managers, AUTM, is a great group of tech transfer professionals worldwide. It's not just US-based, but US-centric, that has lots of very useful resources to help universities all across the world do this well. So I wanted to give a plug for AUTM. And then the second is actually the UIDP, the University Industry Demonstration Partnership. It's another organization that's actually focused on a little bit of a different lens, university industry research partnerships for innovation. But I think there are a number of, again, sponsored programs and intellectual property contracting resources that have been really valuable to countries across the world. So wanted to flag those two specific organizations from the US that might be useful for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Shailene. Those are indeed specific examples of initiatives that have been helpful. And I think that there are two very important points that we can also take away from your first intervention. Innovation is not a business on its own. It should be integrated in all the other sectors and initiatives that might be taking place and challenging different industries, especially now. That idea around academia being more connected to the private sector, maybe also to governments, is also a helpful one in our discussion. Thank you very much indeed. Victoria, we're moving now to a completely different lens, which is the one of a venture partner. Your company, Expert Dojo, is an accelerator and seeking to create unicorns. In your role, are you called to evaluate companies and support them? And what are the needs that they're articulating? How are they seeing the needs of a new startup starting the adventure? You just need to unmute yourself, please.
So in regards to what we are seeing that is the mostly needed is that the mentality of how we grow a company and how the infrastructure of the ecosystem is enabling us to grow the company. For us, we don't see that the company definitely needs to have very large amount of investment from the beginning. However, it needs to have a right mentor and projections of revenue to have, and how they're going to get to that roadmap of 10 million per month revenue between 5 to 10 years. Looking at what's going on and what we are believing that majority of accelerators are kind of failing is that they became a broker of entrepreneurs and investors. And what is missing in between that we think that it's a huge gap is the mentality and education around the strategy of growing a company in a more sustainable and also fast, because it's a big differentiator of European, for instance, entrepreneurs and startups and American startups. And the only thing that we see as an impediment is that the mentality of entrepreneur, that they don't see the roadmap that quick with the right strategy to grow very fast. And that mentality is coming from the government and coming from infrastructure that has been provided to entrepreneur in the ecosystem that they are operating. And that's a huge kind of a help in terms of the infrastructure and the education and the right resources that is available to entrepreneur to think bigger, to achieve what they need to be achieved, to create a unicorn between the 5 to 7 years.
Thank you very much indeed. Those are all important elements that we will also be pinpointing to our canvas. Thank you very much. And we will continue with that venture capital perspective with Andras. You're a venture capital expert in a government program, and you help startups scale up globally. What are the needs and expectations of a venture capitalist from the ecosystem they're active in, and why?
Yeah, Julia, thank you for the question. I think I can sum it up in 3 main points. I think quality startup or quality deal pipeline is one thing that the VC is looking for in environment. The second is an environment which supports the developing of the companies and an environment. The third one is whereby exits can be made successfully. And let's start with the quality pipeline building. I think all we know that these venture capital companies are looking for companies with good innovation and tech basis, and with good teams. And in input, what we really do is to help these startups, educate them to make them ready for the investment. The second thing, I would say that Hungary, we have a quite established regulatory environment with many tax benefits for VCs and for local companies. That should absolutely go on. And also to help VCs in their activities in the portfolio management to help the companies grow internationally. That's very important as well. And the third one, which I would say really the exiting environment, that's the biggest challenge in a small company or small country like Hungary. And I would say that the route that the companies could make the exits on the capital market would be a great help. So if a government or if an institution can help this route of exit for the VCs, that would be, I think, a great help for the whole ecosystem and for the VCs as well. And let's not forget about the feeders that are helping the VCs. And in Hungary, just like in many other countries, it's coming from business accelerators who represent the first tier of this ecosystem. Also universities who generate a lot of spin-offs who feed in actually the venture capital, who can then accelerate these companies and put them on an international level and finally get a successful exit, which is not only a good exit for the venture capital as well, but it also helps to promote the competitiveness of the given country. So I think that was the main idea when in 2010 this whole venture capital scheme was put in place in Hungary, and I think it's now started working. I think it was not a long time, so we have 10 years passed in this, and we already have some great statistics in that, which I will share you later on as a response to your questions.
Thank you very much. Indeed, those are some complementary ideas that we will make sure we integrate in our final outcome. And you also made a great lead to the next intervention, because you referred to government interventions, to regulatory intervention. I mean, those are very key indeed in the ecosystem. So Daniel, we're looking at you. You occupy such a key position at the Kenyan government. You're the CEO of the National Communication Secretariat. And that's an organization that has a critical advisory role in the development of ICT strategies and policies. You mentioned that in the beginning. In your day-to-day role, you're involved in the development of a competitive national ecosystem, and you're also working on integrating that vision into a regional context, into a regional ecosystem. Can you tell us what governments in general need from the other stakeholders in the ecosystem to succeed in their mission of leading and enabling entrepreneurial innovation?
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, what we are seeing from our perspective is that the transformation of the economy is offering opportunities in three main fronts, especially related to the subject matter. That is skills, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And what we've seen as we try to develop these frameworks, the role of government basically is to provide a framework, policies, regulations that encourage entrepreneurship. The last 15 years, we've gone through several policies. What we find lacking normally is the input from the other players in the ecosystem. When we do public engagements, we are required to consult with people who are expected to be impacted by the policies we develop for the government as part of our advisory role. You'll find that the big companies will respond. The tech companies who are not Kenyans will respond. But you find that the other stakeholders in the ecosystem locally do not give you any views. So you find that as we conclude these documents, then that aspect that is required to make government support the ecosystem is missing. We get this from a stakeholder that is not really the people who should be giving feedback. So we think that getting active participation from the other players in the ecosystem, especially the innovators, is important. We found out that we have a program, probably post the website on the URL on the chat, ajiradigital.co.ke. What it does is that we are training youth for the gig economy. We have gone into the universities and technical institutions and other colleges, and we formed clubs, and we are training them on how to get jobs online. But this was an initiative from the government. And this we are doing together with the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and I've recognized the MasterCard Foundation. And we found that by collaborating with the private sector and with a benefactor like the MasterCard Foundation, the impact has been tremendous in the last 2 or 3 years. We are told that about 1 million youth have been trained, and they're actually actively involved in looking for jobs online. Related to that, also our effort to create this, to abuse people this mindset that a job is an office job, 8 to 5. When a parent finds their child in their room working the whole day on a computer, they don't consider that to be a job, but they're probably earning more than a CEO like myself by the jobs they are getting. So this mindset that the traditional mindset that a job means you dress up, you leave the house in the morning at 6, and you come back in the evening looking completely tired. We need to change this and let the general population know that there's work that can be done within the household. But this narrative needs to be supported by people talking proudly about what the digital economy offers them. Innovators need to talk proudly about the innovations that they have come up with and have changed their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniel. This is a very important point. Proactive and meaningful engagement from all stakeholder groups is important for those policy design processes. And indeed, maybe we will touch upon that in the following discussions, but the mechanisms and the channels for enabling that interactions are important too. Jonathan, we need your input and contribution to this discussion so we can wrap up the first segment of our discussion. Are there any thoughts that you would like to bring in, please?
Thank you, Program Director. I'd like to respond under the theme of accelerating economic inclusivity. And I'd like to further underpin my response from a macro perspective and a micro perspective as well. Now, the stakeholder partnership, I think we need to look at a global collaboration strategy. The global one is important to access markets, to access best practices, and to co-create innovative solutions to address the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So I think stakeholder collaboration at that level is a very powerful viewpoint. From a local perspective, I think we can collaborate. I think the key theme out here is collaboration on common challenges, which is the issue of low economic growth. It's a bit of a contradiction in terms, though, low economic growth. We need much more jobs. And then the collaboration could further assist us with strategically aligning all of our objectives to address these issues of low growth and lower job numbers at the same time. And of course, we can assist in the hackathon situations out here because we see it as a great enabler for innovation. But this again must be done in partnership with government, with private sector, with civil society as well. And I'd like to conclude with this proverb in terms of illustrating the power of collaboration. It's an African proverb that says, if you want to run fast, you run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. This is indeed the whole concept of today's panel too, and hopefully we can have a good representation of that togetherness and really what's needed to bring all the stakeholders together. With this, we can wrap up the first round of the discussion, and we were able to explore the needs and the expectation of stakeholder groups. And now we can move to the second segment. So now we're going to flip the discussion and explore what your stakeholder group is ready to offer to the ecosystem. And I would ask you to support your views with specific examples. Each of you will have, again, 2 minutes, please 2 minutes each, and we'll take it from there. And this time around, I would like to start with a policy perspective, and I'll invite our policy advisor to kick us off this time. So Daniel, we're back to you. What should governments do to support the development of competitive digital ecosystem and the regional one?
Thank you, Julia. I think that, as I mentioned, the role of government is basically develop frameworks. So I think we as government need to develop policy, legal, regulatory frameworks that are fair, encourage investment, are in alignment with global standards, so that we ensure that we protect our innovators and also create awareness about the potential that the innovations can bring. And talk about the Secretary General talked about MSMEs in his opening address. And in Kenya, we are told that SMEs accounts for about 81% of the employment opportunities in the country. And they employ about 40% of the jobs. And therefore, we believe they're a key driver to the digital transformation of the economy. And we need to bring them into the discussion on the entrepreneurship and innovation. So we need to develop policies that will bring this into focus. And giving examples of what we've done in Kenya. In 2019, we developed on behalf of a group of African countries, what is known as the Digital Economic Blueprint for Africa. And that blueprint, after a lot of discussions with all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, we identified 5 pillars which we recommended to African countries that they should adopt, either all of them or some of them, or even just one of them. The first one is digital government, which is improving public service delivery. And that can actually create an opportunity for innovators to create innovations to improve government service delivery. The next one is digital business, where we are talking about financial inclusion, developing platforms that facilitate digital transactions. At that time, we didn't know that COVID-19 will come, but I think that idea of digital platforms has come to bear on witness on so digital business, very important. And within that, we have digital trade, digital financial services, and digital content. With the COVID-19, we've seen content moving online. The third pillar is the infrastructure, and this is both digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure, energy, roads, addressing systems, and such. The fourth one is innovation-driven entrepreneurship, so that innovation is not just entrepreneurship, but innovation-driven using new and emerging technologies, so that we can offer solutions that will help solve the problems that we are facing as a country. And the fifth pillar was skills, what we call digital skills and trust, so that we develop the right skills for the 21st century. Perhaps some of us very soon, the skills we have will not be required in the new economy. So we need to develop skills that will help meet the transformation. So these pillars, we've shared them with the African countries, and we think that if we can adopt these, we can be able to meet the ultimate objective of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is a single digital market. So maybe because of time, I can leave it at that one example. Thank you.
That was already a lot. Thank you very much, Daniel. Frameworks, platforms, safeguards, and definitely a space for innovation. Thank you very much. We can now move again to Jonathan, because you're part of a critical entrepreneurial support organization in your community. And I'm sure you can tell us about your contribution. What is that you offer to your community, to the ecosystem, and how do you see that fit with the needs of other stakeholder groups?
Thank you, Program Director. At all times, we'd like to see our incubation ecosystem be relevant. And hence, in my introductory remark, I mentioned we now represent the MICTEA sector. Initially, we started as the media information technology sector and communications, right? And then we evolved because we saw more and more electronic gadgets coming into our ecosystem for requesting programming. And so we then evolved to become the MICTE sector incubator. And then, of course, I did allude to the fact that arts was now becoming a prominent item under the new wave of education from STEM to STEAM. And then we too embraced arts from the different perspective of arts, whether it's performing arts or the art in the manner in which you program or design. So that's a key component within the Smart Exchange ecosystem. So the issue of relevance is key in terms of understanding what the market needs. The other issue in terms of where we add value is that we try to effectively participate on all government initiatives, not necessarily supporting all of the initiatives, but also being highly critical if the initiatives will not give us the right outcome and the right impact. So it's important to also play that role within the communities in which you serve. The similar role we play in terms of the academia, where we always try to make a contribution to align the academia in terms of what are the private sector within the 4IR spaces looking for, rather than the academia just continuing producing the traditional graduates that they used to. We then spun the issue of short courses being relevant for industry, thereby guaranteeing a kind of job uptake. Equally, we challenge the private sector within the ecosystem. The issue of the big gap between the rural versus the urban in terms of infrastructure is a very real issue. And so we appeal to the captains of industry to have a deep social responsibility in terms of not necessarily only chasing the high profit margins that one would achieve in the urban areas, but take cognizance of its dire need and impact in rural communities as well. Equally, in our collaboration, we engage with civil society, both in terms of what are the challenges and how we could assist them via the hackathons. But the bigger push in the South African context is for civil society to take care of the infrastructure that's around them. You would have seen in the media with the civil unrest that we've had, it wasn't a good story to tell. So as an incubator in this entire collaboration strategy, we tried to play that role to connect the dots so that we could get the right kind of impact that we want within this digital divide challenge that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I would ask Jess to maybe tell us if he relates to what you just said, and give us your perspective, Jess, on how private sector can support the ecosystem, and what is the relationship between the established private sector maybe and startups, and why they should collaborate.
Sure, thanks. When you say private sector, I assume you refer to sort of the big established companies, the corporates, whether they're local or regional or global perhaps, and what role they have in local startup ecosystems. And when I look at, I mostly look at Southeast Asia, but I do think it's representative for many other parts of the world as well. When we look at the corporates here, we often see three different ways in which they engage with the startup ecosystems. The first one is, and perhaps the simplest one, and perhaps the one we see the most, is big companies that recognize the digital opportunity, that recognize the opportunities that some of these emerging startups have, and then try to work with them either by investing in them or ultimately by acquiring them and absorbing them into their own businesses, right? And they do that by creating corporate venture capital arms or corporate entrepreneurship or corporate accelerator programs or similar activities like that in order to sort of get some exposure to the startup ecosystem and establish networks with the entrepreneurs that are building new businesses, and then ultimately finding someone that they can invest in or acquire. That's one way. The second way we see companies, big companies, engage with startups and entrepreneurs here is by supporting and investing into the startup ecosystems through providing their own products, through organizing activities, through providing mentorship, other types of resources, sometimes by doing investment into startups with an aim of having those startups becoming their customers or partners later on. And we see that a lot with the big tech companies, right? The Amazons and Googles and of the world that are providing products and services to lots of digital businesses around the world, and that recognize that some of these startups that are starting out now, well, they're going to become big and successful businesses one day. So by spending some time and money on keeping them close to us now and building network with them, well, we can gain from that down the line. That's the second one. The third one is still relatively new, and we've seen that more in other parts of the world, for example, the US compared to here, but it's happening more and more, where you see big companies or bigger companies that are designing products and service lines specifically targeting startups and emerging entrepreneurs. One example of this is in the financial sector, where we see more and more products and financial services specifically targeting, for a good example of this is e-commerce businesses, right? Where we're seeing more financial services companies providing financing products for e-commerce businesses, to provide working capital or whatnot, to provide liquidity for their operations, which historically has been something that's been very difficult to come by for early stage startups, right? They can't go to the bank and get a loan. They can take on VC funding, but they don't have access to a lot of the debt products and whatnot that bigger companies do. And we're seeing more and more companies specifically providing products and services to startups, right? So among these 3 different ways of collaborating with startups, there's some really interesting stuff going on. And part of your question here was, well, why wouldn't these big companies see startups as competitors? And I think the answer to that is I actually think they do, right? But I also think that if you're a big corporate and you're smart, well, then you think, well, better to keep my competitors close than to try and operate in a vacuum, right? And I don't think we should necessarily see all of this through an adversarial lens, right? A lot of this is not a zero-sum game. And I do think that there's lots of good examples of when you can collaborate, well, you can actually make 2 and 2 become 5. And when you sort of take an ecosystem approach to working with startups, and you are genuinely trying to help, well, you as a big business can benefit, and of course the startups and entrepreneurs can benefit as well. And all that is not to say that, of course there are examples of predatory behavior and corporates that have acted irresponsibly and so on. That goes on all over the world, and that's going on right now. And I think as ecosystem builders, we have a responsibility to educate all stakeholders and help them figure out how they can make the most of all of this, without engaging in a predatory activity, without leaving people, sort of offering people suboptimal opportunities and whatnot. So that's something everybody needs to think about. But I actually think we're seeing more and more good examples of how the corporate sector can engage with startups. And if I can just add a last final thing, Daniel, you mentioned before in your comments, I think it was really relevant how what's going on in the tech communities, in the startup communities, in the innovation communities right now around the world. It's not an incremental change, right? It's a paradigm shift, right? It's a totally different way of thinking about how we work and how we do things. And I think the best corporates anywhere in the world are the ones who get that are not trying to build startups or engage with entrepreneurs in the mold of how things used to be done, but who are trying to take the best learnings from how these startups operate, and incorporate and integrate that into their own sort of big established businesses.
Thank you very much for that perspective, Jess. That was indeed fascinating. So it's important really to find that common ground between cooperation and competition and see how that balance evolves with time. Thank you very much. I'll turn up now the floor to Muskan to tell us her perspective of a startup and what is that startups actually contribute to that ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. So basically, the startups, like I said before, in developing countries, their whole perspective is different. Like they cannot operate the way that it would in a developed country. They have to focus more on educating people first and creating awareness first, because that is essentially what's needed. And small initiatives like the one which was by the ITU, like the Generation Connect Challenge, is what is needed to actually serve as a springboard for the youth to come forward and to put forward their ideas. So yes, I believe that startups need some sort of more input from the youth, and that can only be done if there's small initiatives like the Generation Connect Challenge and stuff like this, which can really benefit other youth entrepreneurs. to just, come into that market and to come into that environment, and, to think like that, regardless of their gender, their race, their age, they can have, the platform to, any solution that they believe can really change the world. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Those platforms for giving more visibility and connecting young entrepreneurs are important indeed, and hopefully will have impact in the long, but also in the short term. I'll now turn to Victoria. Can you tell us about what your organization can offer towards creating the next unicorn in the communities you operate in? And please give specific examples if you can.
Really, we started in 2016 by bringing the community of startups and giving them the free space, starting to create a network for them and events, and just observe them for a couple of years until 2018. Actually, 16 to 18, we were kind of operating in a way that incubating a startup, linking them, and providing certain infrastructure to them to see how they're going to survive. And what we came up at the end, we noticed that it's not only the investment that the startup needs and connecting to the venture capitalist is the way that, how we strategized. And as I mentioned in previous conversation as well, that's something is the roadmap of creating a unicorn is very, very important. And we noticed that any other, accelerators, they became a broker. And what we did is that we believe that we need to create a persona. One of the success rate of American startups is that the personal branding, the brand of the tech itself, no matter whether in deep tech or fintech, the branding is a very, very important element in the roadmap that you are going through. And then having a bigger vision of how I'm going to achieve that vision and how I'm going to take the revenue from $1,000 per month to 10 to 100 to 1 million and to 10 million roadmap. That's the roadmap that we are looking for. So we became like a program that not only provides investment, but also education and infrastructure to shape a companies that they become the runner, and investors are going to be after them. And in this, kind of a roadmap, we created a program that it's designed in how we help a company from a personal branding to the brand of a tech itself and the company itself, about their strategy, about their bigger vision of building a multinational, conglomerate companies, and how we can, take that model of a big companies and implement it for the new startup with 5 to 10, employees. And that was kind of what we shaped in terms of communities, and every communities that we talked to, from European to Middle Eastern to Africa, we tried to look into that model and adopt that model based on the laws and regulations and infrastructure of that region. So we tried to adopt that and how we can, help the companies in that ecosystem to become like an American startup and become a unicorn to be. And that unicorn to be should have some sort of a roadmap to have, and we try to provide that.
Thank you very much, Victoria. So it's also going beyond financials and really developing a full system of support for those new companies. Thank you very much for bringing that point in. And I will now move on to Andras. Since you're also part of that stakeholder group, to give us your perspective and to tell us more about how do you see the contribution of financiers, and how is that also evolving? We heard that there is a lot of change happening. Please.
Okay, thanks for the question again. I think the main function of a VC is really to facilitate the whole ecosystem with providing the necessary funding, and obviously includes giving the opportunity to selected teams, entrepreneurs who can live up to that opportunity, and then obviously to facilitate it through, and I don't only mean the financial side, but also the education, the business development side, to teach them how to build up a team, actually to teach them how to land their business on a foreign market and so on. And at the end of the day, this is how you can make a startup into a later stage high growth company and a sustainable company at the end of the day. And to illustrate this, what happened in Hungary, and I was referring to this in my earlier answer, is that like in 2010, there was a huge new VC ecosystem put in place, which was an EU co-funded scheme, which means that 30% of the funds were subscribed by private individuals or private investors, 70% was subscribed by the EU fund of funds. And based on that, the whole industry was set up actually. And there has been, since the beginning, I think 1.5 billion euros of funds has been deployed on the market. So that has been financing over 1,000 startups. And currently, I think, for instance, in the last year, only 200 startups just received fundings, and more than 35 VCs are present. And funding from the very early stage, from the very seed stage till the growth stage, up until 5 to 10 million is also available. So that actually shows that in 10 years, with this funding scheme, we're able to establish a whole ecosystem, which is based around this VC funding. And I think besides the financial logic, I think it also greatly contributes to the competitiveness and the innovation, or the growth of innovation, or the facilitating of innovation in Hungary as well. So that's a good example, and I think that you're quite sure that this type of program happened in many Central European companies, and this is one main mean or method to that how VC can actually contribute to developing the innovation and the local ecosystem in these countries.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm swiftly moving to Shailene, who has the special role to wrap up this round of comments with your academic perspective on how academia in general can support the innovation ecosystem and facilitate some of the dynamics. Shailene.
Thank you, Julia. I'll be brief in the interest of time. In short, I think academics have the R&D-based innovations to offer, innovations that can address market demands. In the US, universities and governments have actually long been hand-in-hand partners of entrepreneurship. People think Silicon Valley was built on the backs of these brilliant entrepreneurs and private sector ingenuity alone. No, not at all. High value entrepreneurship, the kind that can be built, that built the US economy and economic sort of prowess, came most often from innovation and R&D born startups. Many big tech companies began this way, and excuse me, it was actually Stanford, UC Berkeley, and top-tier universities coupled with, as Daniel mentioned, strong federal investments in university R&D and infrastructure that made Silicon Valley such a hotbed for innovation entrepreneurship. You asked for specifics, so I encourage the audience to check out a book called The Code by Professor Margaret O'Mara, which explains this full history of Silicon Valley. And also, this will probably be well known by this audience, The Entrepreneurial State by Professor Mariana Mazzucato. Both texts get to the very heart of your question around the value proposition that academia has in the innovation ecosystems, but also their strengths and limitations and how they play with other stakeholders. I will share some articles in the chat as well that shows specifically how academic research served as the building blocks of, say, the iPhone, for example, the exact federal research grants, the exact researchers, and the exact universities. The dot connecting of lab to market is so crucial for innovation ecosystem building, not just in countries like the US with massive R&D funding at the federal level, but for developing countries as well. So I'll share a couple of those chats in the a couple of those links in the chat, because I think they'll be helpful for the audience as specific, concrete roadmaps to building university infrastructure supporting entrepreneurship. The final resource I'd want to share is this group called the National Academy of Inventors. I alluded to this in my prior intervention, but this organization actually convenes academics who are entrepreneurs and patent holders themselves. And I think speaking with the academics who themselves have done this work will be very helpful for countries looking to replicate the special ingredients that foster innovation ecosystems on university campuses. Earlier, to Muskan's great comments, I shared the University Innovation Fellowship in the chat as well to have this level of resource for the student level. But for the professors and the faculty and the academics, the National Academy of Inventors gives another concrete community of practice centered in the US, but global in scope and mindset that may be useful for follow-up from the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aileen. Those are very concrete examples and hopefully very helpful for all the participants here. Thank you very much indeed. And that takes us to our next round and final round of this discussion. That was already such a great conversation. And we have now a few more minutes to reflect on the main findings that we've heard about and reflect on the gaps. Where are the struggles? Where are the gaps? Is there a perspective gap that needs to be bridged? And how to foster that whole of ecosystem approach to nurturing entrepreneurship-driven innovation. And since we're slowly but surely getting out of time, I would ask you to please keep your intervention to 1 minute. Try to please give us the essence of what you see the biggest gaps until now are. And please also try to focus on things that we haven't yet addressed in this conversation. And I would like to start with Jonathan. Jonathan, where are the gaps?
Thank you, Program Director. It's a tough question to critically look at your gaps, but I would think the first gap in our context, in the South African context, we have a developmental agenda as one of our key responsibilities. And now when you squeeze in a developmental agenda, you have to have government funding to assist you with the developmental agenda. And so that's a serious gap, and government is not coming strongly to the party to bridge that gap. Secondly, in terms of a government gap and the incubation ecosystem, government does not procure directly with the innovators from the incubation ecosystem. So that's a serious gap. They're trying to put in legislation, but we're still far away in terms of supply chain challenges, etc. The other serious gap we've got out here is, especially currently, South Africa is going to an election mode. So everything is focused towards winning the next election rather than looking at how to really grow the economy. And hence the sustainability of the development ecosystem further comes at risk. And lastly, because of the 1 minute curfew time, the South African context has a very poor or weak angel or investor community. And so therefore, this collaboration with our international partners could be a great opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. You did very well. You put forward very important points in that 1 minute. Jess, would you like to build a little bit on that and tell us, can you relate to what Jonathan just said, or do you have any other thoughts, please?
Sure, I'll highlight some gaps that I've thought about, and I have to say I'm not sure I have solutions for those gaps, but nonetheless we can discuss. So I think, I mean, look, I'm looking at Myanmar with what I'm about to say now, because that's where I've spent most of my time in the last several years. But I do think it's relevant to other countries at similar stages of development as well. I think a challenge we always find ourselves in as ecosystem builders is we have to build a really big tent to make sure everybody gets involved in a developing environment, right? We have to cater to folks who have very little experience and exposure with what it means to build a digital business, with what it means to build a startup. We have to cater to folks who are very educated and have lots of exposure and have access to lots of resources, but who also needs to be part of the local ecosystem and have access to the same local networks and connectivity and community, importantly. And we have to cater to all sorts of stakeholders who are just now starting to figure out, well, what is digital innovation and what is digital leapfrogging and all that stuff? What does that mean to the work that we are doing, right? So you have to build a really big tent, often with limited resources, in an environment where lots of things haven't been done yet. That's really hard. So, that's a challenge, right? And that's a gap in environments like this, because you're often trying to do many things at the same time. So I think, to make it a bit more concrete and to perhaps try and get closer to what we need to bridge that challenge, I think starting to look at niches, right? Maybe starting to think, maybe we can't do everything at once, but we can identify specific opportunities in specific communities and help those communities succeed by connecting them to resources in country, regionally, globally, whatever, to best practices, to people, individuals, corporates and government agencies, other stakeholders, to get to where they need to be, right? So perhaps not trying to do everything at once, but trying to find real opportunities for real progress, because when you then help those niche communities succeed, well, you also create beacons for others to be inspired by, and hopefully make the journey easier later on, so that there's sort of a momentum that you can start building. So that would be my 2 cents on that topic.
Great insights. Start small, but start, and start smart as well. Choose your battles. And thank you very much, Jess. Shailene, I would love to have your academic perspective on that. Where are the gaps? I'm sure you have plenty in your pocket.
Thank you very much, Julia. I'd like to touch on a piece that has surfaced a couple of times during the conversation, but from the lens of academia in particular, is inclusiveness. I'm honored to serve as a member of ITU's Generation Connect Visionaries Board, and digital inclusion, especially for youth, is key if we're serious about innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems being drivers for economic mobility and stability and growth. We know from user-centered design and public problem solving that, especially in the digital ecosystem context, we can't really have user-centered design happen if the public is not represented among the innovators. And we desperately need to make entrepreneurship ecosystems more inclusive. This is certainly true in the US, but no doubt in many, many other countries. For example, last year, women-led startups received just 2.3% of venture capital funding, 2.3%. It's unacceptable. Racial minorities receive disproportionately lower investments from VCs, and universities that enroll racial minorities also have far less entrepreneurial ecosystem building resources. So if there's one thing that I'd love to elevate, like Jess, I actually don't have a solution for this challenge, but I just like to elevate it nonetheless, is let's make sure we take the time, even if it means going slower, to build inclusive innovation on entrepreneurial ecosystems. There is one resource I can share along these lines. In my prior role, which you alluded to, Julia, we did try to convene universities around inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and I just dropped the link in the chat to a recording from a prior session. In the US, the Lemelson Foundation in Oregon is a good resource for inclusive innovation ecosystem building, and they're also a funder, so that may be useful for some of you out there. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aileen, and thank you everyone for keeping as short as possible. And on that note, I would like to request our very committed interpreters to give us 5 more minutes after 4:30 Geneva time. Can we please have 5 more minutes so we conclude the session? I'm not hearing the answer, but I don't have the interpreter's channel.
Yes, the interpreters agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. This is very much appreciated, and we definitely got drawn in a very interesting discussion that we'll try to wrap up really quickly. Muskan, can you give us your takeaway? Where are the gaps? Where are the struggles?
Yes, of course. So to sum up everything, and I really appreciate all of the points which everyone has added. I would specifically focus the same point on more inclusion and more involvement of the youth. I was just reading the other day this article that my generation, the new generation Z, is basically one of the most entrepreneurial generation, and we love to have a quick start. We don't like waiting. We don't like going through that the same whole process of first of all getting a college degree and then going through that. We have all of these ideas, and we are the generation that grew up seeing all of these struggles. So for us, we love to have resources and things which kind of prompt us to do more. So my key takeaway was that I believe it is essential for there to be more initiatives, there to be more even small stuff like competition and etc. to make us more involved in bring us more into the entrepreneurship world, because there's a lot of ideas and innovative solutions that can be harnessed from my generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muskan. Indeed, again, very important ideas that we don't have immediate solution for, but we need to continue reflecting upon. Victoria, your minute to wrap up this discussion, please. You would need to unmute yourself, please.
It's in regards to infrastructure, and infrastructure means like access to human capital, access to financial capital, and getting a motivation to become an entrepreneur as well. And these are all linked with the government policies in terms of universities, in terms of motivating the wealthy, people to invest in the risky business of, venture in general, in terms of facility of access of public and private sector, both to implement the new technologies and at least pilot the new technologies to commercialize the ideas of the universities. So these are all linked together that I think if we build a very strong infrastructure in any regards, it's going to help. And I hope that, at least, from today's that we are seeing a lot of changes in agriculture and in education and in very much sectors that bringing lots of value to the society. We see that these gaps are going to be tightened, and it's going to be lower and lower.
Thank you very much, Victoria. We need to work on bridging those gaps indeed. Andras, from your perspective, where are the gaps?
I have a lot of things on my paper, but to cut it short, I would only emphasize one thing: is that the main challenge is that would be to link the ecosystem that we're find regionally or even in one country. And from a VC's perspective, this would absolutely mean that making more cross-border transactions. So, Central Europe is a let's say compilation of small countries. So we have to have big companies who are present on the global market to be successful and sustainable. So I think, general, that's my takeaway, is that it's not enough to have one, individual ecosystem to be set up and be successful, but we have to link those ecosystems together.
A great insight indeed. And I'm moving to Daniel, who has the honor and the most difficult task to speak last on this session. Daniel,
Thank you.
A last thought from you.
Thank you. I think one thing that's missing is the political infrastructure. The ministry I advise is called the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs. So we have the technology, we have the youth, and we have the innovation mandate. That has made it very easy for us to, well, not easy, but has actually facilitated engagement with the youth and the innovation ecosystem. So the political infrastructure is important. Secondly, I do agree with Jonathan on that as government, we need to do more in terms of having funding and for innovation. And I'm talking specifically about digital innovation or ICT-centric innovation. And also we need to find a mechanism for promoting the adoption and use of local innovations within our own countries. Next, we need a platform, a public platform for engaging the innovators. I'm talking about things like sandboxes. Where does an innovator go other than maybe the privately set hubs, innovation hubs? Perhaps as government, we need to set up engagement platforms where innovators can come, and that way their hands can be held in terms of IP, in terms of formalizing their business. And last but not least, I think we can refer to absence of good data sets. So as governments, I think we need to revise our existing policies frameworks, which were developed with innovation. When innovation was not in mind, we need to revise them to capture the requirements of the 21st century and have policies, for example, on open data, so that you can have clean data sets that can then be used by things like AI and machine learning to be able to, to help us with the decision making. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniel, for bringing those very valuable points. And I guess both you and me, we will have to carry over those important thoughts to the stakeholders from governments and regulatory communities, our communities, most definitely. Thank you very much to all the panelists for those great insights. And I would now give the floor to Mo. He has already brought up on the screen that absolutely awesome framework that he has put together with the contributions from everyone. Mo, would you like to say a few words on that?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm not going to turn on the camera, but I think there was a quite active discussion and I tried to capture every point. And for methodology, the yellow is what the current state is. The red are some of the gaps and the blue are examples like, Charlene was giving several time and other people as well. And the green are the takeaways, right? And I think Victoria mentioned everything is interconnected. So the framework we're using for this is, again, an innovation framework where you see policy and regulation that underpins everything. You have access to capital and the resources, the talent, the infrastructure, the culture, and the market and the vision and strategy. So when we categorize them, we can see, for example, there was a lot of discussion about academia, the role of academia, building bridges. There was a lot about supporting the talent, first the individual and then the companies themselves, a readiness for the startup with programs like the input programs or different type of programs, right? And then there was a lot about market and also using the networks in the market to connect them. And a lot about the corporate role and their changing role, in fact, the venture capital of corporates and all of those things. And then policy, which was discussion that underpins everything that I put at the outer side. And of course, the mindset and the inclusion, which came up several times, the rural-urban divide, the gender divide, and the mindset in terms of inspiring people, inspiring entrepreneurs, and starting small, for example, like the Generation Connect program challenge that we run. And of course, the big elephant in the room, the vision and strategy, where we try to get everybody to have a common vision. Silicon Valley is an inspiration, great, but everything is different. So, and collaboration between the stakeholders, which came out several times, the government role as an enabler, the strategy and then the programs that are not basically aligned. And to take all that away, this is what we got. We basically say to takeaways are to achieving the SDGs, it will require new rethink of everything. Entrepreneurs as captain of industries. I use Jonathan's role from STEM to STEAM. The vision has to be aligned. There's a lot of good practices that exist. How can we inspire the ecosystem who needs it from it. ITU actually does a lot of these good practices research to offer this. There is a ecosystem collaboration mechanism which came a lot, and I think tomorrow's discussion will get into this, the whole of ecosystem collaboration mechanism, and as well as the academia type of collaboration that Charlene brought up several times. Vision and strategies have to be aligned. And if a stakeholder is actually does not have the right program in their environment, they have to go build them, right? Like the input program, for example, with one mandate, having these feeder networks, trying to create a bigger pipeline, going into other ecosystem, connecting and linking them, right? Which also comes up. And basically to the idea that Jess brought, which is to think big, but start small to create the beacons. And linking ecosystem, which is important if you're in a resource-deprived environment. And by the way, I invite you to Friday's discussion where we'll launch 3 great ideas which will change the world, hopefully, and we'll call for partnership for that. That will cover this. And of course, the orchestration, which we'll cover tomorrow. And last but not least, holistic thinking and assessment is needed to be able to revise these ICT policies. And this is where ITU has been intervening as well in several areas. Over from my side, thank you very much. And floor is back to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Mo. That was incredibly rich. That's such a great way to frame the debate. I think we have a very good snapshot of the efforts that are being underway by all stakeholder groups. And we also realize that the work needs to continue and probably the communities need to get closer together. We need to also keep reframing that debate. Many of you said that everything is evolving and evolving fast. So there are ways and that we need to change and things that we need to do that we didn't have to do before. So definitely that creative thinking needs to continue. Thank you very much indeed to all the excellent panelists that we had today. Our hour is up, even 10 minutes over time, but that's a much longer conversation that we will try to continue over the coming days. So stay tuned for the next session of the Global Innovation Forum tomorrow and for the next days. And thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.